Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man! Let's go to another question. Annabel Matharu, please.
Stratford-upon-Avon has 2 excellent grammar schools. Is it now time to remove the barriers that prevent new grammar schools from opening?
This is a big issue here, Stratford-upon-Avon, which has 2 very successful grammar schools, as you say, but the issue is whether there should be more of those and whether they damage the education system as a whole. Justine Greening, the Conservatives did allow a grammar school to grow, or put another grammar school in a nearby town, but refused to allow brand new grammar schools to start. What's your policy on it? What's your view of it?
I think broadly what you've seen happening over the last 5 to 6 years is more and better schools, better qualified teachers, more children, around 1.3, 1.4 million more children in good or outstanding schools. So our education system is doing a better job now than it's done in the past of preparing children for being successful in life and for work. And in terms of what's the best school to do that, actually we have been more flexible on allowing grammar schools to expand, but in the end, from my perspective, it's less about that and more about the teachers that are in the school, whether they feel they can do the best possible job, whether children have the right kind of a learning environment. We try to free up the system by allowing more free schools to set up so that people with different ideas about how schools should run can give those a go. But I think it should be less an argument about structure and more about, frankly, the substance and the quality of what children are learning when they're in the classroom.
What do you think, Hannah?
Well, I had 2 children. One went to the local comprehensive school and my daughter went to the girls' grammar school in Stratford. And for me, it was a case of finding the right school for the right child. And my daughter, who is quite academic, really thrived in that academic environment. And I think this one-size-fits-all in education isn't necessarily right. We have to find the right school for the right child.
And I think that's a really important point. I mean, I went to my local comprehensive, but one of the things we tried to do is make sure that parents have got more choice. And having a wider variety of schools means that there is going to be more choice on people's doorstep now than we've seen in the past, which I think is a good thing.
But you think the policy should change? There should be more grammar schools?
I do, yes, definitely.
Theo, what do you think?
Well, I think we've got to accept one big fact, that not all children are the same. And at the end, you know... And what we need to do is find choice and freedom of choice and allow people to choose schools that are right for their kids. I'm dyslexic, so I would have been a total waste of time in a grammar school. In fact, I would have been negative in a grammar school. I went to a comprehensive school. But there's other children that will thrive in a grammar school. But I think we need to be able to accept that we're all very different and we're going to get the right school for our child. We can't just shoehorn everybody in some ideological school that just does one thing and produces the same character at the end.
Your comprehensive school would have had people of all abilities, wouldn't it? The point about the grammar school is you select at 11 or whenever a number of children to go away and have that kind of education. That's the difference between the comprehensive and the grammar school.
Well, not in practice, no, because the local grammar school would have taken the other kids and the kids at my school were more vocational, more practical, and in fact, a lot of the kids in my school went on to apprenticeships. And that's what suited us.
But do you think it was better for your school not to have the more academic children in it?
I don't think it was just not to have the more academic, but we majored on different things that actually rocked our boat, that we were interested in, that worked for us. But to put a child in a situation or a challenging situation where it's not right for them, it's not. We're all so very different.
Lisa Nandy.
Well, I really disagree with pretty much everyone who's spoken on this so far, because I think that comprehensive schools like the one I went to aren't just factories, actually. They are capable of dealing with the fact that they have different children in them. And, you know, the point's been made that not all children are the same, and that surely is the reason why we shouldn't allow the expansion of grammar schools, because children develop at different rates, they come from very different backgrounds, and we know the evidence is very clear that children who come from more deprived backgrounds often end up catching up later in terms of their academic achievements. And I think we do a real disservice, not just to those children, actually, but to all children when we seek to divide them in that way, because the greatest thing that my comprehensive school gave to me was the chance to meet and get to know children from all different backgrounds and of all different abilities. And I think that's what we should be aiming for in this country, to give a good chance to every child, not just for social advantage, but for social enlightenment as well.
In the third row from the back.
Totally
No, the woman in the third row there. That's it. I'll come to you in a moment. Yes.
Yeah, you made the point that it's kind of almost sectioning off areas of society. So the elitist go to grammar schools, the non-elitists perhaps go to comprehensive. I come from a non-elitist family. I go to local grammar school. I travel about 40 minutes a day to get there. My sister went to her local comprehensive. She's achieved just as much as I've achieved. She's accomplished everything she wanted to accomplish, and so have I. I think it's wrong in a way to say that it is, you know, I got to mix with a whole range of people because I went to comprehensive. I've mixed with an equally versatile and variant array of people, and I've been to a grammar school, and my sister and I have accomplished just as well as each other.
So you're in favour of keeping the grammar schools?
Yeah,
You
definitely.
don't think you could have got what you got from the grammar school from the comprehensive?
I think you get different things. I wouldn't have done particularly on a comprehensive. I like quite small environments, whereas my sister thrived on mingling and lots of different people, socialising. I think it's a different learning environment completely.
Man at the back, you sir. Yes.
Are the panel totally unaware that there's a national teacher shortage? We can't recruit teachers, we can't hold on to teachers, and our further education system is so underfunded, it's falling apart.
And where do you stand on the grammar school issue? You think it's irrelevant in that context, do you?
Secondary schools were perfectly fine for me, and they should be perfectly fine for everybody else.
OK. John Nicholson.
It's a great question. My grandma left school at 12 and my mum left school at 14. Education has absolutely transformed my life and my prospects. There is nothing more important for us as a society, I think, than education. But I think 11 is far too young to choose. You're not formed at 11, and we all develop at different rates. So the idea of taking an 11-year-old child and saying, well, look, you should go to a grammar school because you're bright and you're not quite so bright, and therefore you're not going to a grammar school, I think sends out all the wrong signals, because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Children are all different, but then adults are all different as well. And we don't segregate adults, and I don't think we should segregate children. One of the great joys of the comprehensive school system is that children mix with people of different abilities from different backgrounds and different ethnic groups, different social classes, and that prepares them for the rest of their lives, because we're going to spend the rest of our lives mixing with very different people.
Do you mean bright or academic? I'll take exceptions to that. You mean bright or academic?
Well, I mean, obviously academic.
Well, no, they're different words.
Well,
they're totally different words.
Yeah, they're different words.
Different meanings.
They're different words, but try teaching that to a child, because if at 11 you're told that you're not going into that class, you're going to another class, you're not going to make the distinction between academic and bright. You're just going to think you haven't made the grade, and it's wrong to treat children like that.
The woman in green up there, I want to hear from one or two members of the audience. The woman in green.
Now, I teach in a non-selective local school. When I say local, it's actually 15 miles from here, but because of the boundaries, we actually fall into the same category. Now, it seems to be the opinion of everybody I've heard so far that if you've got local grammar schools, they somehow detract from the other schools in the locality. It's absolutely not true. My school is one of the top schools in the country, and we are totally non-selective. And yet, a lot of the students go to the local grammar schools here.
And so do you have any view about whether it's desirable to have more grammar schools, or do you think, are you saying they can live perfectly well, cheek by jowl?
I think they can live perfectly well side by side, and I think academic children deserve the right to have a more academic run. And
OK. And the woman in the black dress with the white spots.
A few of the panel have mentioned about the importance of choice, and while I agree with that, and that all children are different and will thrive in different environments, as a parent myself, what I want to know is whatever my local school is, there is a good standard of education and my child will get a good education. And yes, it is nice to have choice, but actually, wherever children go to school, we want them all to be getting that good standard of care of education wherever they go and whatever the choice is.
June Sarpong.
Well, I think that grammar schools do not address one of the biggest problems we have in our education system, which is the low literacy rates of boys from poor communities. Our education system is completely failing them. So grammar schools help the gifted children, but what are we going to do about the whole generation of young boys from poor families who are completely being left to just squander because we are not investing in those? And I think that's what we also need to be looking at.
Well, a lot of these new tests were introduced by Michael Gove when he was Education Secretary, Justine. What do you make of what he said?
I think we've got to make sure that if we are measuring schools, that it's worthwhile and it allows parents to have meaningful information so that they can get a sense of how their child is doing, but also how the school overall is doing.
The school, then you really realise what it's about. Just go into the school, speak to the head teacher, speak to the people who are really in charge. Then you'll know. You'll feel its pulse.
Well, you're right, and actually I spent over 10 years as a school governor in my local community as well. And the key to this, as I said in response to the lady before, is making sure that there's a learning environment and that teachers can actually get on with their job. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that parents have got the kind of information they need to know about how the school's doing and how their child is doing. I think what I did want to say was there are a lot of places in Britain where we're really seeing our schools radically improve and get better. I'm an MP in London, and we've really seen London schools come on in leaps and bounds over recent years. What we now need to do is make sure that we understand how that kind of progress is happening and why it's happening. I agree with you, a lot of it is about leadership and that senior leadership team around a head teacher too. I've got a fantastic school in my constituency called Ronald Ross that's transformed over the last few years, and it's because of that. So we know what works. The question is, how can we make sure that in schools that are failing, and some of them can be in actually quite affluent areas as well, how we don't accept that, and if we need to change leadership, we should change leadership.
And you've got to engage the parents.
Absolutely.
That's something else. You've got to make the parents feel that they're involved with the school, that they've some kind of engagement with the school, because that transforms the quality of education for the children if the parents don't feel locked out.
All right. We've only got 10 minutes left here, so I want to move on to another point, unless anybody desperately wants to come in with something. Yes, I know you've spoken already tonight, haven't you? Just you, sir.
I would say I work in what would be a comprehensive school, now an academy. I've worked there for 10 years.
As a teacher?
No. And I think that's an important thing. I was in business. And I now work as an enterprise manager, a work experience manager, helping people, our students, to link between the world of academia and the world of business. And I think, yes, I think grammar schools are desirable. I went to one. I also think my old comp, which is now an academy, is desirable because I go and work there every day and I work with some fantastic colleagues, both teachers and non-teachers.
Do you think there should be more grammar schools than there are? Do you think the policy should be to have more grammar schools?
Personally, I think there should be more schools, I think there should be more schools, quite honestly.
All right.
Which are the grammar or whatever. But the point I'm trying to say is there is, what you've all said is brilliant because it's getting that for the right thing. The only test that you need is that the student comes out of that school well prepared for life. Okay. And that's whatever school gives them that is the best school.
Last quick one. Very briefly, if you would.
What I've heard during this discussion is segregation, elitism. And what I keep hearing, grammar school, comprehensive academy, there's far many two levels of separation. We have faith schools, we have comprehensive grammar, and all we're encouraging is segregation. We're separating societies and isolating young people in establishments and then expecting them all to come together as adults, and they will have challenges then.
So, you're against faith schools, you're against grammar schools.
I'm saying we've got too many. What's next? You know, how are we keep separating. Next we might have segregation in councils, in the NHS, for example. Why is there a need to separate and have all these separations going on?
OK. Thank you very much for that.
But can I just say, I think the way to deal with it, I mean, it's about equality of opportunity. That's how you really stop segregation in the longer term, is kids coming out of school feeling like they've all got a great chance of being successful in our country, wherever they start.
OK, that goes without saying, I think.